Hey, book lovers. My name is Em, and I want to talk about books and cats. Welcome back, book lovers. Sorry for the week off, but it was needed. Honestly, things are going to be a little hit or miss for the month of March. It's a rough month, and I'm going to do what I can. So before I get started with today's book, I need to do a little, not even a correction, just more information. I mentioned a book a while back. I didn't get into it, called The Medicine Woman. And I had said I was going to go into it during a self-care Saturday, which didn't end up happening. And it was mostly because I was feeling just off about this book. Like, it was an interesting read, but something just didn't sit right with me. And I kind of realized that it was the idea of a rich white lady who was looking to collect important Native American artifacts, first of all, for her art collection. That was red flag number one. Then she claims to go and be taught all of these secret things that then she can only kind of tell you about, which is possible, I guess, but seems odd. And then just the fact that now she runs these retreats for other rich white ladies, claiming to be a teacher of these Native American practices. It seemed real off. And this book is pretty old. So I did what I should have done before even talking about it, and I Googled it. Now, you have to go past the first page because the first page is nothing but gushing positive reviews for the book or sales pitches for retreats, whatnot. I did find an article from 1994 that very quickly and thoroughly answered my question. Now I have a new question. What the fuck, white women? I am embarrassed that I promoted this book. I am embarrassed to be a white woman again. I just feel gross right now. Here is a small snippet from the article. There's going to be a link in the show notes so you can read the whole thing. It sums it up pretty well. Andrews claims to be the first and only white member of a secret sisterhood of the Shields. This group is so secret that no Native people seem to have heard of it. When one journalist asked her to authenticate that she was in fact receiving instruction from Native elders, she claimed that they would be in danger if she was to reveal their identities. It's just gross. I just can't get behind this kind of crap. There's a lot more to this article. I highly recommend reading it. And honestly, upon deeper investigation into the book, there's not really a whole lot to it. Sometimes first impressions are, I don't know, nostalgic. I kind of read it like it was fiction and didn't really think about it until afterwards. And then I did my research and I don't know. I mean, it also is kind of icky that it parallels kind of what we were taught about Native Americans when we were kids, when I was a kid, which is very, very wrong and whitewashed. And I don't know. The more I learn, the more I see how messed up that version of history is. I'm so grateful for the internet because we really need an unwhitewashed history. We need to know what was actually going on and be told by people who truly know and don't have any other agenda. Anyway, I'm going to attempt to shake off this feeling of permanent cringe that I have at the moment, and let's talk about a good book. So this week I finally stopped by the little store/coffee shop near my house with the intention of picking up a book by a local author. The last time I had checked out the books, there was only 3 different ones, and there was only one. It's actually the first in the series. That was the one that kind of spoke to me, that I wanted to check out. When I stopped in yesterday, there were a lot more books, and I talked to the owner about putting my book feelers in there too, which is exciting. I need to get copies before I can do that, but it's exciting that it'll be in an actual store. So needless to say, I could not pick just one book because all of the new ones looked really great, and I ended up buying 3. And I definitely have plans to go back and buy more of them. I have no guilt about it, though. I love supporting indie authors, and local is even better. I live in a very rural area, and it is exciting how many people around here are writing books. Like, how cool is that? I'm hoping I can get some of them on the pod. We'll see how it goes. Anyway, today we're going to talk about one of my new purchases, Silence in the Woods by J.P. Choquette. So this is the first book in her Monsters in the Green Mountains series, which I will now have to read the rest of. She had a ton of books in this store. I'm definitely going to go back and get more of hers. So, in case you live elsewhere, which according to my stats, most of you do, Vermont is known as the Green Mountain State. It is a gorgeous place, and the woods are my absolute favorite. I grew up in the woods. Almost all of this book takes place in the woods, and it is set in 1917. It actually starts out in the state mental facility. Our main character, Paul, is there for delusions after he is found at the end of a trail in the woods. He's in rough shape. He claims that there is a beast man in the woods that had hunted him and his friends down, hurt him, and had already killed one of the others. He, his wife Jane, and his 2 best friends, Alan and Deidre, went into the woods in search of answers to mysterious stories that already surrounded the woods. A young man had already gone missing near there, and there had been numerous tales of a creature stalking those woods. If you have ever been in the Vermont woods at night, you understand why there would be so many tales like this. It is a very specific kind of dark out there. Paul, Alan, and Deidre are photojournalists looking for a prize-winning story. And almost more importantly, they're looking to have a grand adventure, something that they can kind of brag about. Jane tags along because she doesn't want to be left out, though she does have some misgivings about the trip. The other 3 became friends in college, and she always feels a little bit left out of the group, so she just kind of stuffs down her feelings and goes along. Now, Paul adores her, and after he escapes the hospital, he goes back to the woods to try to find her, because he's the only one they ever found. He claims that one of them had an accident and died, and the other 2 are missing. Even though it's been 2 months, he is convinced somehow that Jane is still alive and out in the woods. At this point, it is November, and the snow is beginning to fall in the higher elevations. This is not an ideal time for hiking, and Paul has on only what he left the hospital with. Still, he ventures back into the woods, just determined to find Jane. The story is told by all 4 members of the adventure, both back when the trip started and then from the perspective of Paul after he has escaped the hospital. I absolutely love the way this story is laid out, and just from an author perspective, the visual layout is really excellent too. I don't want to reveal any more of the story because it is really, really great, and I don't want to wreck anything. I am going to put a link to JP Choquette's website in the show notes, so make sure you check her out. I highly recommend Silence in the Woods to start. It was a one-day read for me. I couldn't put it down. It was so engaging. And now we're going to take a quick break, and then I will be back with some quotes, some catnip, and a new chapter of Heart of the Storm. Be right back. Welcome back, book lovers. So, my cats haven't been doing too much. It's been cold, they've been snuggling and sleeping, and that's pretty much it. We did, however, order some really good catnip from Chewy.com. Love that place. Not sponsored at all, although if they wanted to, that'd be cool. But they have really great prices on pet supplies. And all kinds of fun toys, outfits, all kinds of cool stuff. It had been a while since my cats had gotten catnip because for some reason, cat products are not getting restocked very quickly around here. Like, it's been hard just to find, like, wet cat food, and I haven't seen catnip anywhere. So it was super exciting for them to get catnip. My old boy does not care about it at all. He just kind of sat there and watched as the other two, like, freaked out and just acted so stupid and crazy. Edward, my big black fluffy kid, is he's more into like eating the catnip, and then he gets kind of aggressive and attacks Sassers, and then he falls asleep. He also likes to lay on it. We were kind of like comparing him to a dragon laying on its hoard, because he would just like put himself on top of the pile and not let anybody near it. And then there was Sassers. She is sometimes just so much the quintessential cat. Like, she is, I don't know, she's just silly. If you're on TikTok and you've heard that sound that is just from the Taylor Swift song that's just got nothing in my brain over and over again, that is Sassers to a T, and especially Sassers on catnip. It was hilarious. Speaking of TikTok, I took a video of her playing in the catnip. It's super cute. It's on our TikTok. Go check it out. So I realized that I have not done a quote of the week in a while, and so this week I have two. The first one is from Henry David Thoreau. I took a walk in the woods and came out taller than the trees. And I just love that quote. I love the woods. And it just seemed to fit with this week's theme. And the second one is from John Fowles. In some mysterious way, woods have never seemed to me to be static things. In physical terms, I move through them. Yet in metaphysical ones, they seem to move through me. And that just makes perfect sense to me. And I think if you've spent any time in the woods, you probably know exactly what he's talking about. Anyway, if you can, go take a walk in the woods. It is good for the soul, if nothing else. And finally, I have a new chapter of Heart of the Storm. We're on chapter 43. We are getting so close to the end. Nim's eyes popped open as all the air left her body in a whoosh. It took her a moment to register what she was looking at. Her sister stood in front of her, with her hands balled into tight fists. Rhea and Kevo were behind her. Kevo was gripping her by the shoulders, and she was fighting to break free. "What's wrong with you?" she screamed at Cerise. "What's going on?" "Oh, she's mad because I punched you," Cerise said lightly. Her grin was one Nim remembered from their childhood. It made her stomach hurt even more. "I needed to wake you up, sis. It's time." Cerise's eyes glittered with mischief. Nim straightened up and faced her sister. Their surroundings came back into focus. The four of them were in an open, dry area surrounded by swirling waters. It extended beyond the door of the room. They were still in the mansion, but now everything was underwater. Rhea broke free from Kevo's grip, and with a ragged cry, she lunged for Cerise and knocked her to the ground. The sudden look of surprise in her sister's eyes made Nim giggle. She couldn't help it. Her sweet on the outside, murderous maniac on the inside sister had never made Nim's life easy. She stepped past Rhea's flurry of fists and moved to Kevo's side. "Aren't you going to help her?" Kevo grunted and crossed his muscly arms across his chest. "I just want this to be over." He turned away from her as he spoke and stared at the open doorway. A dark shadow passed by, a remnant of Thea's evil. Kevo sighed heavily. Nim felt for him. He was an extra, same as Cerise in that way, but her sister had enjoyed her involvement. She'd always wanted more. Rhea had exhausted her anger. She was not much of a fighter, and Cerise was bruised and a little bloody, but nothing more. She huffed as she got to her feet and stomped over to Kevo's side. She punched him in the arm, but he didn't react. Rhea took Nim's hand and squeezed it. Her cousin was still trying to catch her breath. She tried to smile at Nim, but her eyes were scared, and her mouth faltered. Nim squeezed her hand. "Okay," Nim said in a low, calm voice. They all turned their attention to her, and everyone's irritation was forgotten. "Time to swim," Cerise laughed and dove into the swirling waters around them. The current brought her around, and she shot off toward the door, disappearing into the hallway. Kevo took a step toward the water, but Nim stopped him. "Give me your hand." Nim took his hand and traced symbols onto his rough palm. They glowed silver and then vanished. Kevo shuddered. "Okay, go," Nim said, and he dove into the swirling waters. His body flipped head over foot. It took him a couple revolutions to right himself. On the next, he shot off toward the doorway. He swam through and turned to follow Cerise. Nim took Rhea's hand and began tracing the symbols on her palm, but Rhea jerked her hand away. "What are you doing? What's up with your voice?" Rhea feared her. It gave Nim a brief thrill. She squashed the feeling immediately. They were no longer children, and the world had changed beyond recognition. She didn't want her cousin to be afraid. "This is my realm," Nim said softly. "I don't know how I know what I know. I just do. Trust me. This is what has to be done, and we have very little time." She snatched Rhea's hand back and quickly traced the symbols. They glowed bright and sunk into Rhea's skin with a sharp, quick pain. It burned like fire, but only for a moment. Rhea hissed at the pain, but it was gone in an instant. "Good. You're with me now. Let's go." She pushed Rhea into the water and dove in after her. She exited the current, taking Rhea with her. A silvery rope tied them together, but it faded away as they swam through the doorway and down the dark hall. Thea was tumbling into the dark, swirling waters. Her claws scratched along the trunk, but she couldn't keep a grip. She tumbled in the dark for so long that she was disoriented when she stopped. She spun all the way around, but it was all darkness. Everything looked the same. The pressure was building inside her. Nothing was going right. These stupid kids were ruining everything. She clenched her fists and her nails pierced her own palms. Her blood flowed into the water and swirled around her, glowing faintly in the dark. It was too much. Thea was pulsing with rage. It was a building storm inside her. She spun around one more time, looking for anything at all. She kept spinning, but nothing changed. She spun, and then she began to scream. It erupted from her in a flood of electricity that charged the water around her in a bright purple ball. With the light, Thea easily saw the slim gray trunk of what had once been her child. And there was a little flutter in her womb. She hesitated. A moment of regret made her pause, and in that instant, a deep, ominous rumble shook the earth. The water bubbled and trembled with the sound. Cracks formed in the floor under her feet, and small roots began to creep out. Thea's rage came back all at once and with twice as much force. The electricity around her grew and burst, shooting out in every direction. It cut into the tree trunk, and Harper cried out. The sound came in a wave that rocked Thea and sent her spiraling again. She righted herself easily this time. She moved straight for her daughter now, collecting loose threads of electricity as she skimmed along the cracked floors. The roots reached for her, but they weren't big enough to catch her. When she reached the tree, she lashed the electric rope around the trunk and laughed when it singed into the tree's flesh. Her daughter's flesh. But it was too late now. Thea knew she had made mistakes. She had regrets. Something that she had never expected. But there was no going back. She had chosen this path, and there was no way out now. It was her or Harper. They couldn't both exist. The girl, or was she more tree now, had to die. Thea pulled harder and heard the hiss of the electric rope cutting through her kindred. She banished any remnants of emotion from her mind and began to shimmy her way up the trunk. And that is the end of chapter 43, book lovers. I hope you're still enjoying Heart of the Storm, and I hope you have a wonderful week. It is finally starting to feel like spring here in Vermont, and I am so excited. The sun is coming back, and the days are finally getting longer. I love this time of year. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this episode. And until next time, keep reading.